So in some ways I think that this tragedy gave a sense of purpose to people that was very positive, and we tried to translate that feeling into this building that we're in today. The day of the fall of the towers here, September 11th, I was actually on an airplane flying from Oslo to JFK, arriving at 9 in the morning. So our plane was diverted to Canada, and as we banked the airplane across Long Island, it was at that moment that the second airplane crashed into the tower here. Well, we didn't know what it was, so as we looked out the window, we saw smoke on the horizon, but we assumed it was a fire or some other kind of natural tragedy. It wasn't until we landed in Canada, where we were exiled for about 7 days, that we first learned that the towers were attacked. And we were together with 8,000 other passengers in a town that only had 10,000 inhabitants, Gander, Newfoundland. So this place is on an island in the North Atlantic, so we were all held together. I often say that I felt the best and the worst of humanity in one day. But when I say the best of humanity, I always remember that time as a large group of people working together to move through a crisis. I think many people have a similar memory, but in my case, I was on an island with 8,000 fellow passengers, and we all somehow came together. The people of the community brought us food. They were very kind to us. And this sensation was set very deeply into my psyche at the time. I think when one confronts a tragedy, it's always a transformative experience, and one goes through stages of understanding. Obviously, the first stage is shock, and that's usually followed by a sense of yearning and desire that things would somehow have been different. And then as you move through these cycles intellectually, you realize one day that you are alive and that you have to present the strength of being alive to those around you. And this building is meant to be a part of that cycle. It is not meant to capture the trauma directly. It's meant to allow you to see yourself at a moment in time. And actually, in today's globalized and interconnected world, those ephemeral moments are being lost to us naturally. So we want to recapture those moments to allow us to see ourselves in this moment in time. Designing this building was quite challenging, as there was no actual site when we arrived. The World Trade Center towers had fallen, the site had been cleared of debris, and the bedrock, which sits about 10 to 15 meters below us, was the only thing that was available to us. None of the skyscrapers that you see today existed. Their designs had not been published. So in a sense, it was a non-site without ground to stand on. So we had to imagine how this building would exist 10 years in the future once other things had been more readily established. We had many thoughts about this site, but several things held true throughout the entire time of design and planning, which was about 5 to 6 years. One of them was that we wanted to create a very horizontal building, a very horizontal geometry that complemented the character of the memorial, because the memorial itself is the primary concern of this site. So we didn't want to detract from that. We wanted to complement it. So the shape, which is very horizontal, is very different from the verticality of the surrounding skyscrapers, and it helps break up the massive scale of those tall buildings before they hit the ground and enter the character of the memorial itself. And also it's rising up off the ground, so it feels as though the memorial grounds themselves pass through the building in a sense of giving a sense of continuity. Well, one of the things that was very interesting to us was to create a sense that you understood you were descending into the earth, and likewise as you left the museum that you were ascending. back into daily life. So the staircase is very gentle and very broad, and it's not straight. It meanders as you move up or down it. It also is created from two separate materials. On the upper levels, the staircase is a light wood, and on the lower levels, a cast concrete, so that you're very clear, you have a very clear understanding of what is above the ground, what is on the ground, and what is going below the ground. And that ties in to a sort of ribbon of circulation that occurs in the museum itself once you enter the lobby areas below grade. One of the astonishing characteristics of the atrium is the fact that so many people from the memorial want to understand what's in the building. So they all come to the facade, press their flesh against it, and peer inside. And when the building is open, it will be very interesting because they'll see other people looking back at them. The two columns that I'm standing in front of are part of the original structural system of the World Trade Center towers designed by Yamasaki. They were recovered after the tragedies and held in a location at JFK Airport, actually, for safekeeping. They're quite beautiful, and they're one or two of among, I think, 8 to 10 other columns that were preserved reasonably well. They were chosen as particularly strong specimens of what they did, which is hold the building up, because the original building had an exoskeleton. The structure was on the outside of the building. It didn't have interior columns in the way we're used to thinking of a normal building. So this was what held those towers up, and they remained intact more or less after the tragedies. So they were brought here and placed, and they're so large and so heavy that they had to be brought in before we finished the building and before the atrium was completed. So they were actually brought here a number of years ago, I think in 2010. I believe that was the correct year. And they brought in and lifted into place, and then we built the building around them. They're very dramatic. They're very beautiful, actually. Their aesthetics are quite intriguing, almost like a Richard Serra type sculpture. You see the depth of the rust and the patina. You see the fingerprints of those people that built them, and you see the fingerprints of those that helped save them. So in that sense, they're rather special.